to our today's discussion, and in our discussion we intend to talk about the subject which says God's account declared bankrupt. God's account declared bankrupt. Now, just from the title itself, you must begin to worry yourself as you listen to this message. The question is, how could God's account be declared bankrupt? Because the state of bankruptcy simply means that the account has no money, or in other words, God's account has so many debts that it needs to clear out, but yet there is no money in the account. Now, you and me know very well that God introduces himself to you and me as the owner and the creator of the world. Now, if God be the owner and the creator of the world, then the question is, why is his account declared bankrupt? He also tells us that he is the owner of every single aspect and entity of this life. And yet we see in this vein that his bank account is declared bankrupt. Now, it is worrying me so much why we should hear of bankruptcy in God's account. God is stranded. He's a stranded billionaire. Okay? He is a laughing stock in the community. We also see that you and me beg so that we sustain the service in the house of God, because there is no money or there are no resources in God's account. We gamble every single day, gambling for the purpose of God, and we think that we are helping God, and we are satisfied with that status quo. At a point when we begin to gamble, making all manner of strategies, and also we make the house of God a theater, or in a bid to sustain the activities and the services in his house. The question is, why should you and me begin to create initiative so that we help God's church run? Is it that God has failed to run his own church, so that you and me must seem outright intelligent beings that should begin to think on behalf of God? Didn't God know how to make his church work and how to help his church operate? Okay? That's a question that we must begin to ask time and again. Why is God's church declared, or God's account declared bankrupt? Psalms 24 verse 1 to 3. What does the Bible say? The Bible says, "The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof, the world and they that which dwell therein." Verse 2. "For he hath founded it upon the seas, and established it upon the floods." 3. "Who shall ascend into the hill of the Lord, or who shall stand in his royal place?" So what we basically see here is that God himself has declared that he is the owner of the world, and that every single aspect is his. And in this vein, we do well to understand that God begins to introduce himself that the whole world is his, and the fullness thereof. This word fullness, it means that every single bit of it, whether big human beings and whatever their representation and whatever their position and levels, God still declares that he is the owner of all these things. Let's also read the book of Isaiah. Isaiah chapter 42 verse 5. What does the Bible say? 42 verse 5. So the Bible says, "I am the Lord, and there is none else. There is no God besides me. I guided thee, though thou hast not known me." God is simply trying to tell us two things. That number one, he is who he is. And two, that he is also the owner of everything, and there's no any other God besides him. Then two, he tells us, he is the Lord who created, and we are his. And that the only evil is that we have not known who he is. That's where the evil begins. The book of Genesis chapter 1. Genesis chapter 1 verse 1. The Bible says, "In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth." So we have established the truth here that God is a creator. He is the owner other than just being the creator. Now, who is in charge of God's account? That's the question that we must begin to understand. Who is in charge of God's account? Genesis chapter 1 verse 26. The Bible has something to tell us. In Genesis chapter 1 verse 26, what does the Bible say regarding, of course, who is in charge of his account? Verse 26 says, "And God said, let us make man in our own image, after our own likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over everything that which creepeth upon the face of the earth." May the good Lord add a blessing unto the reading of his word. So, in this vein, what we hear is that when Adam came from the Creator's hand, he bore in his physical, mental, and spiritual nature a likeness of the Maker. God created man in his own image, and it was his purpose that the longer the man lived, the more fully he should reveal this image, the more fully reflect the glory of the Creator. So we have discovered that God's account is managed by human beings. You and me are the ones that are managing and are running, are responsible. They are the signatories to God's account. God's account is given, in your hands and my hands. So anytime that we hear that God's account is declared bankrupt, we know who's responsible. We know who's careless. We know who is, like a desico in matters of managing God's account, that it is you and me. The question again is, what should man do to remedy the situation? How should man therefore behave in remedying the situation here that God's account has gone bankrupt? The book of 1 Corinthians has something to tell us so important. So 1 Corinthians and the chapter is chapter 4, and we are reading from verse 1 to 2. What does the Bible say? "Let a man so account of us," that's Paul speaking, "let a man so account of us as of the mysteries of Christ, and the stewards of the mysteries of God." Yeah, you've not understood this. What is good sometimes must be repeated. "Let a man so account of us as of the ministers of Christ, and the stewards of the mysteries of God. Moreover, it is required in stewards that every man be found faithful." Did you hear that? Moreover, it is required in stewards that a man be found faithful. Paul is saying, let every man know of us that we are the ministers of Christ, that we are the managers, that we are the workers in the house of God, and that also we are in charge or responsible of all the secrets of God. You do understand very well that matters of accounts are secret matters, are matters of secrecy, that people who hold, authority to the account, they keep the account, away from the seeing or the access of others. And now you and me, we are signatories to God's account. And we are also stewards of the mysteries of God. God's account is a mystery. It is himself who opened it, and of course who gave it in your hands and mine, that we must be in charge. So God will not suffer you and me waste his resources. He does not want that. How can God suffer you and me waste his resources? The church is God's account. It is supposed to be sustained, or it's supposed to sustain itself without trusting in an individual, but in the system itself. You see, how God made and managed his account, or how he designed it, is that this account must not be managed by one individual. This account must not be managed by a few chosen individuals. God's account is a mystery that is supposed to be managed by all of us. Think of your account when it has nothing in it. How do you feel? How do you survive? So the question is, how does God's church survive, therefore, without resources in it? If God's account is declared bankrupt, how then is the church going to manage its activities? You see, sometimes I've wondered how, of course, God's account could be declared bankrupt, and yet there are individuals who are responsible to be a manager and then fail to run the accounts and lead the company to an extent where it goes bankrupt. The only possible way to deal with you is to fire you and employ someone who's responsible enough to manage the account. How did God design it? That's what we want to know. In God's arrangement, how did He design it? Leviticus chapter 27 verse 30 up to 32. So the Bible says, "And all the tithe of the land, wherefore of the seed of the land, or of the fruit of the tree, is the Lord's. It is holy unto the Lord. And if a man will at all redeem out of his tithe, he shall add therefore the fifth part thereof. And concerning the tithe of the herd and of the flock, even of whatsoever passeth under the rod, the tenth shall be holy unto the Lord." May the Lord bless the reading of His word. The issue of tithe, retaining, no, by the way, we don't give tithe. We retain tithe and we give offering. So the issue of tithe should never be a subject of debate by any individual ever on earth, whether believer or non-believer, whether rich or poor, whether you are a bourgeoisie or a proletariat, whether you are the have or the have not, whether you live in town or in the village. As long as you breathe, as long as you occupy God's land, as long as you enjoy the benefits that which comes with God's creation, you as an individual, then you must know that you have a responsibility to retain tithe and give offering unto the church. Because God designed that, all the tithe of the land, all, not part of it, whatever the possession, whatever comes in your possession, in its increase, whether it be land, whether it be the seed of the land, whether it be the fruit, all those are holy unto the Lord, and they are His. And if a man will therefore choose to eat tithe, on redeeming it or on retaining it, you must be willing to retain out of it or add there unto the fifth part. Now remember, the tithe is a tenth. So if you eat 100 kwacha, which was supposed to be retained as tithe to God, in principle the indication or the implication is that you must retain 500 kwacha to redeem. When you have already planned that this is for God, and then you decide to get it, at that point the implication is that when you begin or when you think of retaining it, regardless of the situation, yours to retain is a fifth part thereof, of the tenth that which God demands of you. How then also did God design it? How should His account run? No, the tithe did not, originate with the Hebrews. It has nothing to do with the Hebrews, the tithe. How did then it originate? Let's read the book of Genesis. The book of Genesis has something to tell us. Genesis chapter 14 verse 20. What do we see in Genesis chapter 14 verse 20 regarding God's design? The Bible says, "And blessed be the Most High God, which haveth delivered thine enemies into thy hand, and give him the tithes of all." This is Genesis. It has nothing to do with the Hebrews. Nothing at all. The origin of tithe is from the creation. That is how God designed that, His system should be managed. The system of God must be self-sustaining, self-generating. So God designed that, the system itself must have a way in which to have its best way of survival. The same book, Genesis chapter 28. And we are reading from verse 22 of chapter 28, in hearing what God has designed. 28 verse 22 of Genesis. What does the Bible say? So the Bible says, "And this stone which I have set for a pillar shall be God's house, and all that thou shalt give me, I will surely give the 10th unto thee." So you see that the issue of the 10th or the tithe has nothing to do with the Hebrews. It has nothing to do with the Jews. It has something to do with God's design. Who is the owner? Who is the owner of this world, and who has the power and the responsibility, therefore, to give dictates and demands of man? Who is the owner of everything, that which we possess in this world? Who has the power? Psalms chapter 50 verse 10. What does the Bible say? "For every beast of the forest is mine, and the cattle upon the 1,000 hills." God is still declaring that everything is his, and we cannot rob him of anything because he owns all. In principle, what God has done is as good as one who has a company, and then he employs workers in that company. The direct implication is that that individual who is employed has nothing to do with the property that is given in his hand, except to manage it on behalf of the owner of the company. So God has also given us delegative powers. You know, if there is anything that is so dangerous in life, are delegative powers. Because delegative authority or delegated authority does not give anyone the power to adjust except by consultation through the owner of the premise. Verse 8 of Haggai, "The silver is mine, and the gold is mine, saith the Lord of hosts." So we can basically here conclude that every single aspect of this life is God's, and man does not own anything. So sometimes, I wonder what makes man become so proud. God has given you beauty, and you think that you are a champion, and you must begin even laughing and insulting others because of the beauty that God has given you. Don't you know that it's not yours, and God can get it at any time? God has given you a few banknotes or some money in your pockets, and you think that you are a champion. You want to begin even, thinking that others, they are not thinking beings, and only yourself. Watch out. Watch out. Don't be too proud of yourself. God has just given you an opportunity to manage yourself and the resources around. And so when he gives you, remember that also others have the equal opportunity, and you can give them just like the way he has given you. You are just privileged that he has given you. So take good care of it, or else God will visit you. And in the day of his visitation, God does wonders. So he's seeing you and he's seeing me. Let's watch out. Deuteronomy chapter 8 verse 18, the Bible says, "But thou shalt remember the Lord thy God, for it is he that giveth thee power to get wealth, that he may establish his covenant, which he swore unto thy fathers, as it is this day." Remember God, my brother. Remember God, my sister. Whatever you have, it's God that has given you the power. In other words, it is God that has given you an opportunity or the privilege that you may have whatever you have. Whether you be intelligent, whether you have money, whether you have material possession, or whether you have the natural beauty, it's God that has given. Remember him in whatever he has given you. That's the indication here. Who should deposit in God's account? That's a question. Who should deposit in God's account? We must begin now to understand. Who should deposit in God's account? Luke chapter 12. And we are reading from verse 47 and 48. Those are the verses of interest. What does the Bible say? The Bible says, "And that servant," a reflective pronoun, "and that servant, that, which knew his Lord's will, and prepared not himself, neither did according to his will, shall be beaten with many stripes. But he that knew not, and did commit things worthy of stripes, shall be beaten with few stripes. For unto whosoever much is given, of him shall be required much, and to whom men have committed much, of him they will ask more. Here is a direct implication. He who knew the will of the master and yet did not do anything shall be beaten with many stripes. But there is no exception of he who did not know. Even he who did not know the will of the master and yet committed crimes that are worthy of stripes shall be beaten but with a few stripes. To whom much is given, much is required. Now let me summarize it. Whether you know that returning tithe and offering is a requirement, or you do not know, God will still require you to return tithe and offering. To he who knows that he must return tithe and offering and yet does not return, you must know what awaits you. You will be beaten with many stripes. But even he who did not know and yet committed a crime or did not honor God, he will be beaten but with a few stripes. To whom much is given, much is required. When God blesses you with billions and millions, return in billions and millions. But if God gives you 5 kwacha, in the same 5 kwacha, remember him. Because to God even little is much. And much may be little when there is no love for God. So those that which have the privilege to hold millions of kwacha, God also demands a lot from you. And with those, of course, that holds coins with them, God still needs something from that coin to give him. He requires it. And you must know that you must deposit in God's account, whether much or little, depending on what God has given you. He needs it. Okay? What has gone wrong? What is the problem anyway? Where have we missed it? Why should the church be suffering? You know, sometimes I wonder. I get to ask myself so many questions. The means that which we employ in the church, to have or to raise resources, many of the means that which we bring on the table to realize money in the house of God are wrong methods. Let me repeat myself. Many of the elders and pastors will go to hell for having thought that, we are helping God. We can't help God. God has already established a system through which man must return tithe and offering. The best means of raising funds or resources in the house of God is to teach people how to raise, how to bring, how to give offering, and how to return tithes. Simple, that's the only message. Let people return, and let people not return if they wish to do so. It is not your business and mine to start thinking and sitting down to plan about how people return. Yours and mine is to preach and teach people how and why they must return, so that God's account should always remain, flourishing. I wonder, sometimes we would invite people and call it, fundraising or promotion. Promotion or fundraising in the house of God. Making certain individuals so powerful that we begin praising them and say, no, he's the one who bought the iron sheets. He's the one who bought that door. In the house of God, sir. That is wrong. How many times do we do also promotions when we are building our houses? How many singers do we invite to come and do a promotion to build our houses? If we know the noble duty of how to build our houses, why don't we know the noble duty of how to also deposit in God's account? How many times do we do promotion to go to schools, universities and colleges that we go to? When we are taking our children to universities and colleges, how many times do we do promotions? We don't do those. We know how to raise money. So we must not also make God's house, a theater, where we have to struggle and invite the so-called powerful singers. Powerful singer. Powerful preacher. Where on earth? There's nothing like that. Let's just emphasize on returning tithe and giving, returning tithe and giving offering in the house of God without calling anyone's or any so-called powerful. God is so powerful in his own self. By reminding people and by teaching, the greatest principle of leadership says that men ought to be reminded more than they need to be informed. It is our duty to remind individuals in the house of God, to sincerely explain to individuals about the necessity of returning tithe and giving offering, so that the church itself must be self-sustaining. Not what we do. Let's begin contributing. This one contributed 10,000, this one 5,000. That is wrong. Let people be pierced in their hearts that they must know the need to return without forcing anyone, but by teaching individuals. Mark chapter 3, verse 8. No promotions. No building promotions. No donations. If people can donate, if people can contribute during those times, why can't we explain to them? It means that they have resources. What they do not have is the information as to how and why they should return to God. Praying with them and pleading with them all the time will help us to realize God's plan. Mark chapter 3 verse 8 to 12, the Bible says, Will a man rob God? Yet ye have robbed me. But ye say, Wherein have we robbed thee? In tithes and offerings. Verse 9, Ye are cursed with a curse, for ye have robbed me, even this whole nation. Bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be meat in mine house, and prove me now there herein with, saith the Lord of hosts, if I will not open you the windows of heaven, and pour you out a blessing, that ye shall not be room enough to receive it. May the good Lord add a blessing and the reading of his word. We have seen where the problem is. You and me, we are criminals. We are robbers in the house of God. We are the ones that have made God's account declared bankrupt. Today there is so much cry. There is no money in the church. God's church, no money. As if it's a company. God's church. And yet in your pockets there is money. In your account there is money. And in the house of God there is no money, sir. Madam. You and me, we are the robbers. Smart robbers and noble robbers. The criminals in the house of God. You and me. We are thieves, greatest of them all. While we load our banks and our accounts with a lot of money, in God's account there is no money. You are the one that has made, God's church look as though it's a bad place to be altogether. You are the one that has driven away, the orphans and the underprivileged in society from the church. You are the one that has made the church be thought that it is not doing anything to help the poor. You and me, we have robbed God. We are criminals. Even though we wear suits and go to church, we look so noble, so kind, so patient, so loving. Yet we are criminals. We have robbed God. In tithes and offerings, we give sparingly. We want to create a name by people approaching us and telling us, let's contribute, there will be a promotion, so you will contribute a 2,000, and you find it very easy that way to remove money, so that they should know that you give. My brother, that is wrong. Institutions must become stronger than individuals, and not individuals becoming stronger than institutions. To make the Church of God be a robbing station or a place of begging is wrong. Elders even call people, let's remain, there will be a meeting. Money, we need to buy this, the church has no money. Let's contribute. Contributing in the house of God. Who contributes in your house, to buy minimum and to buy food and all other things? Who contributes in your house and my house? When we carry out many programs, no one. But yet in the house of God, God must begin robbing and begging from individuals. That is wrong. And this is why Malachi says, you are cursed with a curse. These words are so strong. To be cursed is already worse. But to be cursed with a curse is the worst thing. Let me follow, the local language. You are cursed with a curse. Mwalitipa ne tipo. Mwagasinganyigwa alusinganyo. That is serious. Mnatembeledwa nditembelelo. I thought maybe when he says you are cursed is enough. But cursed with a curse. Because we have robbed God. And even the whole nation of Israel has robbed God. You and me have robbed God. And this is why God's account has been declared bankrupt. So God's account has gone bankrupt because of you and me. That we have failed to deposit substances in it. Individuals have fat accounts and wallets. But God's account is lying waste. There's nothing inside it. What has gone wrong? Do you find it pleasurable? Do you find it exciting that you and me should be flourishing, and yet God is suffering, calling for many for many activities, for many programmings in the name of promotion, building promotion. I'm yet also to see one day when we shall hear of building promotion of an individual. Wrong methods must not be employed in the church of God, because those methods, they only make certain people powerful and others, look less, relevant in the church. The only way is to encourage individuals to retain tithes and to give offerings to the church. Talk about various offerings that people can bring, in knowing that God is the owner of everything and everything. Including you and me. God is the owner of us. Including every single aspect that we possess, God is still the owner. It's better you suffer as an individual and God's church, flourish. There is more wisdom in that. May the good Lord add a blessing unto the sharing of His word, even as we think of how God's account can be declared bankrupt. Thank you.